Rewritten title, True Scary Story. The rules were never for me. Thumbnail text. The rules were lies. Search keywords. Haunted building horror story. Ghost exorcism true story. Creepy list of rules horror. Radium girls factory ghost. Haunted asylum narration. Scary stories to sleep to. Paranormal experience story. Script. The first of my fingernails came off while I was still smiling at her. It didn't bleed at first. It just lifted, the way a price sticker peels off glass, slow and patient and almost gentle, and then it dropped to the floor of a stairwell that had no bottom and no top, and the cold around me leaned in close to watch it fall. I kept smiling. I had to keep smiling. Because the thing standing across from me in that endless dark had been waiting for centuries for someone to stop. /n/n let me go back. Let me start where the clipboard was still in my hands and I still thought this was funny. /n/n, scene, the building, /n/n the job was in an immense building in a forgotten corner of the world, the kind of place that doesn't show up on the maps the living use, even when the roads around it have been paved and widened and lit. Over the last 100 years that building had been a great many things. It had been a factory once, humming with women at long tables. Then an orphanage, full of small beds in long rows. Then a psychiatric ward, and the beds had straps. Then, for a while, a prison, and the doors had locks on the outside. Each time, something happened to the people inside it. Something increasingly, unspeakably wrong. And each time, the landowner threw up his hands and shut the doors and let the dust come down like snow, /n/n but the city grew toward it the way water finds a low place. Glass towers, parking structures, a light rail line humming somewhere out past the trees. The opportunity cost of leaving that land dead became too high to stomach. So a man with a great deal of money and very little patience hired me to evaluate the building and renovate it. /n/n that is exactly the language he used. Evaluate. Renovate. I let him keep his polite little words. /n/n the first night, after I'd taken the advance and signed a waiver thick as a hymnal, I walked in through a side door that breathed cold air at me like a mouth. The hinges had not turned in a long time and they did not want to turn now. Inside, the dark had a texture to it. That's the only way I can describe it. It wasn't the simple absence of light. It was a presence. It pressed on the backs of my hands and the nape of my neck like wet wool. The whole place smelled of old plaster and rust and, underneath that, very faintly, of something sweet gone bad, the smell a hospital gets at the very end, when even the bleach has given up. /n/n on a steel desk just inside the entrance, someone had left a clipboard. I picked it up. The paper was new. The handwriting was not. And there, in tidy ballpoint, was a list of rules I was told I must follow if I wanted to keep my life. /n/n you already know the shape of these things. /n/n, scene, the rules, /n/n rule 1. Nobody you are interacting with is a living life form. /n/n rule 2. When anyone calls and asks for Edgar, you must convince them that Edgar is not here. You may tell them anything. But you must never hang up. You are safe only once the caller hangs up. /n/n rule 3. Remind the incense man that the morgue is in the basement, but do not show him the way, no matter how much he insists. /n/n rule 4. If you hear a music box begin to play, you must find it and close it before the song ends. /n/n rule 5. If a window opens by itself, throw salt out of it and wait until the hands release before you close it. Then move the wheelchair back to where it stood. /n/n rule 6. When you see the twins, direct them to the experimentation room and tell them the doctor knows best. Smile back at them. Put your earplugs in before the screaming starts, /n/n Rule 8. Never, ever speak or write the number of the missing rule, /n/n Rule 9. Every night at 9 o'clock, mix rat poison into a bowl of dog food and set it out for Fluffy. If Fluffy finishes the whole bowl by midnight, vacate the premises at once, /n/n Rule 10. If you smell smoke, run up to the roof and hide behind the water reservoir tank until it begins to rain. Nowhere else is safe. Do not talk to Martin, /n/n Rule 11. Do not look her in the eyes, /n/n I read all of it standing in that breathing dark, by the light of a little flashlight, and at the end of it I did something the men before me almost certainly never did. /n/n I laughed, /n/n nias. I laughed. A real one, that bounced off the high ceilings and came back to me thinner and stranger than it left. Rules, you see, are made by people who know almost nothing, for people who know even less. Every contractor who came before me to nurse the generators down in that basement had received this same list, passed hand to hand like scripture, and every one of them had obeyed it without ever once asking the only question that matters, /n/n/y, /n/n Let's pretend, for a moment, that you got this job instead of me. You pocket the advance. It's good money. You take in the rules. And every time that old desk phone rattles in its cradle you scramble for a convincing lie about where Edgar has gone. He's on leave. He's with a client. He's run off to Timbuktu with his mistress. Sometimes you even shout until the caller gives up and the line goes dead. And then you breathe again, because the rule says you're safe now, and you don't ask why a man named Edgar is so dangerous to admit to, /n/n I can tell you why, /n/n in the early 1930s, Edgar was a sensation. He'd spearheaded an innovation that turned this very factory into a money engine and put hundreds of women to work at those long tables. His products were divine, people said, like they'd been brought back from some brighter future. Everybody wanted one of his beautiful watches with the dial that glowed all on its own in the dark. Self-luminous paint. The women painted the numbers by hand, and to keep the tip of the brush fine they would touch it to their lips. Point. Dip. Paint. Point. Dip. Paint. All day. All those mouths, /n/n when the women began to fall down dead, their jaws crumbling, their bones lit up from the inside like Edgar's beautiful dials, everybody wanted answers instead, /n/n Must I remind you that Edgar is no longer alive? That your callers are not among the living either? That you are the one sitting behind his desk now, in his chair, breathing his stale air? They call and ask for him because the very weakest kind of dead thing cannot simply go where it wishes. It needs directions. It needs an invitation. And the rule that keeps you on the phone, lying, never hanging up, that rule keeps you from ever giving one. /n/n So. Let me introduce myself properly this time. I am here for a job. But my job is not to follow a list of silly rules scrawled by frightened, ignorant people trying to treat the symptoms of a haunting while they survive long enough to make rent. My job is to cleanse this place. To exorcise every last thing that lingers in it, so that the man with the money can pour his concrete and forget the land ever drank so deeply, /n/n Evaluate. Renovate. As I said, /n/n, scene, the trap, /n/n I started with the easiest task, Edgar, and his patient little phone callers. I built a trap for them. It took the better part of half an hour, kneeling on that cold concrete floor laying out the lines and the salt and the few small objects that mean nothing to you and everything to them. Any dead thing weak enough to need an invitation would be weak enough to snare. I knew that the way you know your own name, \n\n when the work was done, I went to that old desk and I changed the voicemail. I made my own voice soft and warm and welcoming, and I said \yes. Edgar is here. Third room on the second floor. Please do visit, at your earliest convenience, \n\n. Then I picked up a suitcase I had brought with me, and I went down a corridor that had once smelled of chalk and small unwashed bodies, into an abandoned classroom where the little desks still sat in crooked rows under a film of dust an inch thick. And there, in the dark, I broke a rule on purpose. I spoke the number that was missing from the list. The forbidden one, \n\n \7 I said, \n\n. She came out from behind a stack of crates in the corner, and she did not walk. She dragged herself across the floor with her arms, her legs splayed out behind her at an angle no living spine allows, bent and loose like the back legs of a frog left out to dry on a road. Her eyes were not eyes. They were two small black holes, neat and round, as if something had pressed thumbs into the dough of her and pulled out what was underneath. Some of her fingers were gone. Her hair was a snarl of ginger, and through her lips ran a length of black yarn, drawn tight, stitching her mouth nearly closed, \n\n. Will you play with me, she said, \n\n. Her voice came out muffled and small around the yarn, barely louder than the dust settling. Her head lolled side to side as she pulled herself toward me across the floor, one ruined hand over the other, \n\n. I knelt and opened the suitcase, \n\n. Will you play with me, louder now. Angry, in the way only a child can be angry, total, bottomless, taking up the whole world. And then she was not on the floor anymore. She was beside me, right at my ear, close enough that the cold of her made the little hairs on my arm stand up. With a sudden lurch of strength that did not match her broken little body, she reached for me. Will you play with me, \n\n. I let her touch my hand, \n\n. Her presence was clammy and wet, like the air just above still water, like the last breath of someone who drowned and knows it. I would love to, I told her, gently, the way you'd tell any child no. But I can't play with you, 7. I'm so sorry, \n\n. The black yarn binding her lips began, slowly, to unravel. The scowl beneath it stretched and stretched, far past where a jaw should stop, into the shape of something that was about to stop being a little girl at all, \n\n. He can, though, I added, \n\n. She stopped, \n\n. Have you ever felt like something was watching you, turned in an empty room because the back of your neck went cold? Tell me about it in the comments. I'd like to know how many of you have been right. \n\n. pulled her hand back. Children, even dead ones, are curious creatures. They are so easy to turn, so trusting that they look, to crueler things, like fools. She reached past me into the suitcase and she gasped, a small, wet, wonderful sound. From the case I had brought her a little dog, \n\n. Not a living one. A beloved pet whose small body still glowed, faintly, with the warmth of a spirit not yet gone. His owner had meant to have him cremated and could not quite let go, until I offered to carry a few words down from her dead grandmother in exchange. People will trade almost anything for a sentence from the other side. The dog's name was Biscuit. It was stitched onto his collar, \n\n7 ran her ruined hands over him, over and over, and light came back into the two black holes that were her eyes. Real light. She giggled. She read the name on the collar, mouthing it, and then she hugged him to her chest so hard I thought she'd pass right through him, \n I leaned close. Would you like to go with Biscuit, I asked her, so he can play with you forever, and she nodded. Her eyes were brimming now, and her whole shape was already beginning to thin, to soften at the edges like breath on cold glass. You're so nice, she whispered. Nobody ever played with me. Nobody was ever nice to me before, \n then she was gone, and the dog was gone, and the classroom was just a room, \n scene, the stairwell, \n but do not mistake me. This is not the story of how I strolled through a cursed building, snapping its rules like dry twigs, and walked out clean, \n I knew, by the time I had gone down the same flight of stairs for the 20th time and arrived back at the top, that the last spirit left in the building was a different order of thing entirely. \n let me make you understand what that means. The dead are mostly weak. They are echoes, mostly, frightened and confused, needing invitations and directions, fading at the edges. But she could fold a staircase back on itself. She could make 20 descents end where they began, with no door, no landing, no floor, just the stairs going down and down into a black that swallowed the beam of my flashlight hole. She had no need of an invitation. She took what she wanted from the world of the living the way you take a breath. She had been powerful enough to stay here for centuries. Powerful enough to kill the hundreds who passed through these rooms, and to keep them, \n for the first time in my life, I felt the pull to obey a rule, \n rule 11. Do not look her in the eyes, \n but I couldn't obey it. That's the cruel joke of what I am. My sight for dead things does not work the way your eyes work. I do not need them open. Even with my eyelids screwed down tight, even pressing the heels of my hands against them in that lightless stairwell, I was looking directly, helplessly, into her eyes, \n and the cold came down over me like cold water poured slowly from a great height. And I understood, at once, that she was testing me. How easily, she was asking, could she reach into my body and make it shiver, \n she couldn't, \n that is the one law that does not bend. A spirit cannot take from an unwilling human, because the rules of life are older and stronger than the rules of death. What she could do, what the strong ones learn to do, is talk you into handing the advantage over yourself. The very strongest of them can whisper to you, patiently, for as long as it takes, until you come to believe with your whole heart that lying down and dying is the wisest and kindest choice you will ever make. \n your life, she murmured. Her voice came from everywhere in that stairwell. From the steps. From the walls. From inside my own teeth, \n is not yours to take, I finished for her, calmly, \n you are living on borrowed time, she whispered. I know what you did. That summer, \n then she began, and I will not tell you everything she said, because some of it was true and the true parts are mine. She whispered my secrets back to me in my own voice. She pressed nails I could not see into the side of my face and dragged them down slow, and into each cut she poured the things I am most ashamed of. She had been here long before I was born. She had broken men and women far stronger than me. She reminded me that I had caused the death of everyone I have ever loved. She reminded me that I am bound to suffer, alone, until the day I find some willing fool to take my curse from me, and that no one ever does, /n/n I kept my face still. I did not give her 1 inch of shiver, /n/n/, we know where your body is, I told her, /n/n/n/n, that is the secret of the powerful ones. They draw their strength from the place their bones were laid. Move that body, or disturb the ground around it, and a spirit like her can find herself sealed into torment with no door out, forever. I can't fully explain the mechanism. I only know it is true, /n/n she could take nothing from me without my leave, but I could feel, rolling off her in waves, how badly she longed. Her own existence tormented her. She wanted to be free of it, and at the very same time she could not bear to let go, not after so long, not after so much. Whatever had been done to her in life, she had died with so much rage and grief and unanswered injustice packed into her that it had kept her burning, like radium, for hundreds of years. She was the true source of every terrible thing that had ever happened on this ground, and it had been happening since long before the factory, when the land was nothing but a burial place at the edge of the trees, /n/n/, I have an eternity, she said. And because I had already stepped into her trap, she could keep me circling that endless stairwell, my mortal body weakening with every step, while she held me away from her bones. Do you, /n/n I smiled into the dark, /n/n/, are you sure about that, I said, /n/n if this story is keeping you up tonight, do me a kindness and subscribe, we post something new to be afraid of every single night. /n/n, scene, the chant, /n/n because I don't simply wander into haunted buildings on a dare. I know dozens of ways to drive the dead back. I know how to reach across into their world and take hold of them and tear. I drew a breath of that freezing air and I began to chant, one of the oldest and strongest workings I carry, /n/n the cold pulled back. Just slightly. Her presence, which had filled the stairwell wall to wall, thinned and drew in on itself. I felt her flinch, /n/nan then, one by one, my fingernails began to lift from my fingers, /n/n the first one I told you about. The rest came faster. I stopped the chant, bit down on the words and swallowed them, and the moment I did, her presence swelled back to full and the lifting stopped. I stood there in the dark, breathing hard, 10 points of fire where my nails had been, and I understood my mistake, /n/, na spirit cannot harm an unwilling medium. But when I began to chant, I had reached out and willingly opened a channel between us. I had, with my own hand, undone the one protection that cannot be taken, only given. To attack her, I had to touch her. And the instant I touched her, she could touch me back, /n/n all my decades of dancing with the dead, I had never once met a spirit strong enough to withstand an exorcism and strike me through it at the same time. I had seen plenty of living people torn apart for handing over their consent without knowing it. There are 1,000 quiet ways to invite the cursed energy in, 1,000 doors people open without ever seeing the door. But I was trained. I knew better. And she had still gotten her nails under mine, /n/n I looked down at my bleeding fingers in the weak flashlight beam. Then I rolled my shoulders back, and I lowered myself down, and I sat on the cold step of her endless staircase, and I said, in the most pleasant voice I owned, /n/n an eternity, you say. So. How was your day, /n/n /n/n that caught her. I felt it. Her whole presence stuttered like a held breath. She had an eternity, yes, but we both knew time meant nothing to her anymore. It was a wall she lived behind, not a weapon. And I was the last hope the landowner had. If I could not cleanse this place, he would simply seal it off, brick and concrete and rebar, and walk away. I had already sent away every one of the hundreds of souls she had gathered to herself over the centuries. The orphans. The patients. The prisoners. The radium girls with their glowing jaws. Edgar's patient callers. Little Seven and her new dog. All of them, gone on, where she could no longer keep them, /n/n her eternity, from this night forward, would be more damned than it had ever been. Because it would be empty, /n/n her presence shifted. Settled. It was the strangest thing. I felt her sit, in whatever way a thing like her can sit, as if across from me on the same impossible stair. We simply existed there together, in the same place, at the same time, two things that should not be. My soul is already cursed. She could kill my body on those steps and it would buy her nothing, because a cursed soul cannot be trapped, it simply goes where it is owed. She would only be alone. And of all the things in this world and the next, being alone was the one she could not survive, /n/n at last she spoke, and the rage had gone out of her voice. What was left was older and worse, /n/n I want you to listen to my story, /n/n so that was it. She wanted what they all want, in the end. A witness. Someone to believe her. Someone to hold the unbearable shape of her life and say yes, that happened, that was real, that was wrong. There is an old truth among the dead, a person dies a second time the day the last living mouth says their name for the last time. And she had died so long ago that even my research, and I had done a great deal of research, could not turn up her name. The land had forgotten her. The world had forgotten her. She had been screaming into that forgetting for centuries, /n/n for all my calm. I did not actually have a choice, /n/n I can do that, I said, /n then she hissed, and the cold rushed back into the words and after, I want to rip out your tongue, /n I almost laughed again. What a small, petty, perfectly human thing to want. I will permit nothing else, I said carefully. But I will permit you that. My tongue. In exchange, you must promise to leave this world. For good, /n I felt her weigh it. I felt, beneath the spite, how badly she wanted to be done, /n/n I promise, she said, /n then she began, /n scene. Her name, /n her name was Vera, /n I will not tell you her story. It was given to me, in the dark, in exchange for a piece of myself, and it is the one thing she has left in all the world that is only hers. I will tell you only this, it was worse than the building. Worse than anything that came after her. The factory, the orphanage, the ward, the prison, every cruelty those walls ever held was a faint and clumsy echo of the cruelty that had been done to a girl named Vera on that ground when it was only trees and a shallow grave. She talked for hours. I sat on the step and I listened to all of it, every name, every wound, every small mercy that was promised her and then taken away. I did not look away. I could not have, even if I'd wanted to. And I did not want to, /n/nan here is the thing I did not expect, the thing I have turned over in my mind every night since /n becoming the only soul in all of creation who knew her name, who knew her pain, who knew her deepest secrets and exactly how unfair her short life had been. It did not make her gentle with me. It did not soften her by even a hair. /n what would you have done, sitting on that step, when the story finally ended and the cold leaned in? I still wonder, to this day, whether there was anything I could have said. Whether a kinder listener, a cleverer one, could have walked out whole. /n I don't think so. I think she was simply too strong, and too far gone, and too old. I don't believe I could ever have removed her by force. I believe the only reason I am alive to tell you any of this is that I gave her the one thing she'd been denied for centuries, to be heard, and then I gave her my tongue, /n, scene, noon, /n exactly as the clock struck noon the next day, I walked out of that immense building into a flat gray daylight, with blood all down the front of my shirt, /n true to her word. And she was bound to it now, she had left this world the moment her story ended. And true to her word, she had taken my tongue with her on the way out, /n I texted the man with the money. I told him his building was clean. His land was his again. Then I took the list of rules out of my pocket, the tidy ballpoint, the missing number, do not look her in the eyes, and I dropped it into a trash can by the door without ceremony. The men before me had treated it like scripture. To me it had only ever been a doctor's note for a disease the doctors never understood, /n I was beginning to feel faint, too much blood gone, so I took the medication I keep for exactly this, the kind that slows a wound that should not be survivable, and I sat down on the cold step outside to wait. The ambulance was already coming. I could hear it, far off, threading through that new bright city that had grown up around a grave. /n, scene, reflection, /n people think the worst part of my work is the dead. The clammy hands. The black hole eyes. The endless stares. It isn't /n the worst part is that I learned her name, and she still took my tongue. The worst part is knowing that being seen, being truly and completely known, did not save her, and did not save me, that you can hold the whole terrible truth of another soul in your hands and it can still leave you bleeding on a step in the daylight. She wanted a witness, and I was the only one she would ever get, and it changed nothing between us at all. /n somewhere under fresh concrete now, the land sleeps for the first time in centuries. They'll build something bright on top of it. People will park their cars and drink their coffee and never once feel the cold come up through the soles of their shoes. And only I will know that a girl named Vera was once buried there, and screamed for hundreds of years, and that the last thing she did in this world was make sure I could never say her name out loud again, /n but I can write it. And so, tonight, I have /n subscribe for more horror every single night. And if you want more stories that will keep you up, check out What the Wow Stories for the wildest relationship drama you've ever heard. Link below. Sleep well.